Okay, so just to get us started, I wanted to talk very quickly about why it is we're all here, which is that, everyone is here to be selected onto the national debate team to go to the World Championships in 2025. So just so we know, the scale of this competition and the prestige attached to it. Every year, the World Championships is the World Cup of high school debating. It's held in a different global cities, in a different global city. Roughly 70 nations participate, and each nation can only be represented once. So there can only be one Team India and not like multiple high school teams from India. There are, historically 34 championships have been held in over 25 nations. 600 debaters, coaches, and judges attend every year. There are 8 preliminary rounds, and then you go into 5 knockout rounds until they find and crown one world champion. And this is like any other sport. I think we often think of this as, oh, just any other debate competition. But the way we should be thinking about this is that your kids or you, depending on who's on this meeting, is trialing to be on the equivalent of the under 19 cricket team for the country, except in debate. So that's the way we think about it. That's the effort we put into it. And that's the scale of this competition and the number of countries that participate in this competition that makes it really, really special. It's hosted in a different city every year. In 2025, it will be hosted in Panama, and we're so excited both for the location and the championship itself. This is a Team India that has won a world championship back in 2019, which takes me very quickly to explain what our trajectory has been. So we are a status A nation at WSDC. So the top 16 countries at WSDC are given status A. And that's because historically our performances over the last few years has been really, really commendable and really consistent. So just to give you guys a sense of what that has been like, that is our trajectory. So in 2017, we had a speaker in the top 10. We were ranked 3rd at the end of all the prelim rounds. We ended as quarterfinalists. We were then grand finalists, had a best speaker, unfortunately dropped by just 1 ballot to Team China in 2018. Won the championship in 2019. There wasn't a single debate that we'd lost that year, and that was a historic run for Team India and the very first championship we won, and hopefully there will be many, many more to come. There are a couple of online WSDCs in the middle, and then we went back into an in-person WSDC in Vietnam last year in 2023. We were top ranked, went first into our knockout rounds, unfortunately ended our run as quarterfinalists. Similarly went into the knockout rounds top ranked, but unfortunately ended our run as octofinalists. Nonetheless, we are one of the few teams that in the last 3 in-person WSDCs, probably the only team in the last 3 in-person WSDCs that has won every single preliminary round before entering the knockouts. Close, but not quite there. We just need to get there, bring the cup back home, hopefully in 2025, and all your efforts will contribute to that. So overall, what has worked for us as a country in making this trajectory happen? And that has been 2 things. First is the rigorous and diverse national selection process that we run in a country such as India that has so much talent. And overall, that is what the kind of funnel looks like for the national selection. There are about 3,000 odd students that trial to be on the national team from 50 plus cities. We have 400 students into a second round of selections. And then we have about 80 students enter our final national selection camp. And then we select the 20-member Team India squad at the end of that. And each of these rounds is, filled with, rigorous testing, debating, learning, and genuinely being at each step of this competition, in my opinion, is an honor and a privilege. And to whoever is scribbling on the board, you will, unfortunately be sent to the waiting room of this meeting if that happens again. So overall, I'm going to pause here for just a second because I want everyone to take down the dates because these are the dates for the national selection this year. Of course, you have our dates on the event calendar. You've got this presentation itself, but in case you're like following along, making notes, the dates here are important. So we've got these 3 rounds of selections happening on these dates. And I'll quickly dive into what each of these rounds are in a second. The second thing that has really, really contributed to Team India's performance at the world stage has in fact been the incredible amount of work that our teams and our coaches put in. And on the left, there's a selection of the kinds of coaches that we have year on year. They're incredible, internationally acclaimed, and decorated debaters, judges, and coaches themselves. And on the right, you have here a sense of the kind of work that's put in by the team themselves to make sure that their knowledge and content is improving, that their strategic sense is improving, and their style of speaking is improving. And ultimately, the kind of work that goes into this is encapsulated by a quote that one of our alumni said. He also happens to be the world's best speaker from 2019 when he debated on the schools team, and was last year's World University's best speaker in the Universities Championship. And so he says, from January to July, we did about 150 debates against our trainers and coaches, and probably won 4 of them. So that's just me being really honest and setting these expectations of what it's like to be on the team, the kind of work it takes to be successful, and the kind of pride and privilege that comes with working with the sorts of coaches and trainers that we bring on year. And that is, I think, the expectation you should be going into this with. And that is what you should be looking forward to as part of the being on the national team and trying to get there through this national selection process. Very, very quickly, for you to know a little bit more about us, we have a vision to take debate to the 200 million Indian high school students to think critically, communicate effectively, and lead with courage. And we believe that the evidence has borne out that these are 3 impacts that debate has, both in terms of the data and in terms of all the students that we've seen and worked with in close capacity over the last decade plus of our work. So that means we do, we've got a team that you can see on the slide here. So on the left is our leadership. That's myself, executive director, my head of training and curriculum. That's Atul, who you might have seen in other sessions. Ragini, our programs and partnerships manager, and all of us come with incredible experience, both in working with students in debate as well as non-debate contexts. And then, of course, we have our really, really kind and generous sponsors, the Rajas, who are the chairperson of the Ramco Group and the Ramco Community Services. And of course, Saika, who used to be one of Team India's first ever coaches, who now continues to be our coaching mentor. And so this is the team that is bringing to you the national selections, the national championship, and all the other work we do, which is these 3 things: that we conduct high quality debate programs, both for students who, historically cannot access debate or other extracurricular activities, as well as for students who can and go to private schools. Second is we work on creating a debate ecosystem. So we offer grants to students who are running debate clubs in their schools. We run debate competitions, one for juniors, one for seniors. And we provide mentorship support for students in schools who are both running debate clubs as well as hosting competitions in their schools themselves. And last but certainly not the least, which is what we're talking about right now, we select and coach the Indian debate squad for multiple international competitions across the year. So that's, roughly at a glance what our work looks like. So we've got 6,000 plus students that we reached in the ecosystem last year. Over 54% of that are girls. We've won 13 championships, including the World Championships and the International Competition for Young Debaters, which is an under 15 World Championship. We've got, 85% of all our alumni are in genuinely a top 10 university, either in India, the US, the UK, Canada, or Singapore. 150 plus volunteers support us each year. And if some of you are on here, thank you so much for all your work. A third of our students come from tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And 7 times we've been the world's best speaker at the competitions we've attended. And overall, our programs, are rated and received well. That's a 9.1 on 10. I'm going to stop here for 1 second, only because for those of you who are, young enough to be on Instagram, and unfortunately that's not me, but it is ISDS. We would love if you followed us on Instagram, because all our updates on the selections and competitions and workshops we run goes on there. And for those of you who are old enough, which many of you here are, to have a LinkedIn account, I'm going to request that you just give us a quick LinkedIn follow. So those two are on there. And for those of you who still continue to use Facebook, we've also got a Facebook handle. We do a number of updates here. I know that email often can get lost, even though we do send everyone that's registered an email about the things we're up to, updates about the teams, etc. But that's where our communities are and where we will be posting quite often. So I'm going to wait for exactly 5 seconds before I move to the next section for you to just punch that into your phone and follow us. Perfect. Thank you so much. And I know some of you are in the waiting room, but we promise you we're letting you and your friends in consistently as they get in. It's just, I think, the internet and Zoom in general being slower than we'd ideally like. Okay, so on to understanding the selection process. Now, there is a really detailed video on this with loads of questions and answers that we've put up on our YouTube channel, and we've linked onto this presentation. But I want to make sure that I take you through this process briefly nonetheless, because that leads into what skills and attitudes we're looking for. So overall, you can enter the selection for Team India in an entry round, either as a team or as an individual. We haven't yet announced our individual rounds as dates because we have a partner organization that runs the individual round, and they will be giving us the dates later this month or early September. So that's when you will likely hear about it. And you will have an orientation from our partner organization about that. So if anyone is absolutely not able to make it for any reason to any of our team-based selection events, that is a last resort or second preference that you can opt into. However, we're going to talk a lot about entering the selection as a team. So that's, in our opinion, the track that we hope that you all use, only because it gives you the opportunity to compete alongside people you know, rather than be organized into a team you don't. Second, because numerically, we've reserved more spots for people coming in through that process in later rounds. And finally, for the reason that we believe it builds sustainable debating cultures in your schools and or your communities. So you enter as a team, you go through 4 rounds of debate over a 1-day period, and I'll get into that in a second. The best speakers, so even though you enter as a team, you are evaluated as speakers. So the best speakers from those rounds of debate, so we accumulate scores as well as qualitative feedback about speakers from the judges, move on to an intermediate quiz round. And finally, from that round, we've got the top 80 debaters in the country moving to national selection camp. So those are your 3 stages of selection for the Indian debate team. So we're going to be talking about team-based entry today because that is most relevant to how to put together and select and prepare a team for the selection. So these are the 3 steps. I'm sorry, just give me 1 second. I might, in fact, be... Let me just make sure that I am screen sharing the right presentation. Perfect. Sorry, that was... Perfect. I'm just making sure that you can also see my screen. Okay. So those are the 3 steps there in the very first entry round as a team, which is that you form a school or a cross team of 3 or 4 students. Just to be very clear, in the World Schools Debating Championship format, 3 speakers speak in the debate, but your teams can be larger. And so we are allowing up to teams of 4. Junior teams, 7th to 9th grade, senior teams, 10th and 11th grade. We do want you to try and put together a school team. But if not, as a last resort, you can pull in a friend or someone you know that debates from another school and form what we call a cross team. If you are in a mixed gender school, we're hoping that there is representation and diversity, and so at least one girl in each of the school groups. Once you've put your team together, register for the region you belong in. So where your school belongs, register for that region. Juniors can register in North, South, East, West, and Central. We have one senior selections competition. These dates are all up on our calendar, and you can take a look at those. For juniors, we're allocating 2 teams per school. For seniors, at the moment, we're allocating 1 team per school. And we initially give preference to in-region teams. But if you can't make it, and if you're outside that region, we can try and accommodate you in a different region that you can make it. And then you can go to our website to download free preparatory material. We'll show you where that link is. Don't worry about it. It's actually embedded in this presentation as I move along the slides. So I'll flag that to you. But please make sure to download it. So registered teams will debate in 4 WSDC format rounds on the day of their competition, after which the top individual speakers enter the intermediate rounds. So 4 WSDC style rounds, you will have maybe 4 members on the team. We're hoping that you rotate these members such that every member on the team gets 3 debates that they speak in, and ideally is preparing for all 4 debates. There are 2 teams in each debate. Your team will have 3 or 4 members. In terms of time limits, junior speakers will have 5-minute speeches. Senior speakers will have 6-minute speeches. And on the day where you have 4 rounds of debate, 2 rounds we release the topics for 4 days in advance. And 2 rounds you have 45 minutes of preparation time with just your team and no external support, not a coach, not the internet, not books and printed material, just your team. So there's detailed information on the format and our selection rounds in the free material. We'll make sure that we flag to you at what point you can click and download that. So once these rounds are over, we compile the data across the country and select the top speakers into the second round, that is the intermediate round, which is a 2-part exam taken online. And these are the components of the exam. There's a knowledge component where we are testing students' current affairs and general knowledge, as well as how they can apply them in debating contexts. Usually we have multiple choice and short answer objective questions for the knowledge component. We have a comprehension component where we have a reading and listening based Q&A that's built into the exam that the kids take. And this is to make sure that students can absorb information, take good notes, and answer questions and reflect on that information. Our second part is a speech component where we make the decision to take select students from the first part into the second part. We make them deliver speeches, give them extempore topics, and get them to upload those speeches, and we evaluate those speeches. The top 80 performers from this round go into our third and final stage of selection. That is our third and final stage of selection, which is National Selection Camp. This is a 5-day camp, happens on December 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. That is fixed. Those are the dates. So if you're gunning to be at National Camp, wait to book your vacation tickets until November. What you can expect at National Camp is to get training and coaching from some of the best debaters and trainers in the country at the university level and in the world. You will compete against students who belong to different regions. In India, you will get personalized qualitative feedback after every performance, and then you will be evaluated on your speaking ability, your improvement over time, your knowledge of world affairs and teamwork. And of course, the top students then are a part of the Indian squad that receives coaching from January to July to represent India at different competitions. Having explained that, I quickly want to talk about how you can select or prepare your team. But before I enter that, I just wanted to check if anyone had questions on what we've discussed so far. And if yes, this is a good time to ask. You can also feel free to keep dropping questions on the chat. And when I pause, I will look at all the questions and answer them one by one. Okay, I will hope that that means I've been clear so far.
Darshan,
yes.
Do you expect us to download the slides parallelly as you're speaking?
So I've sent a link to the slides on the chat.
Yeah, we have already opened the PPT, but do you expect us to download all the important slides?
The links, okay, so I will, whenever I need you to click a link and take a look, I will pause and give you the time for that. So far, it's okay if you haven't done that because there's lots of links upcoming with lots of materials. So I'll walk through that as I do that. Okay, so there are three aspects to selecting and preparing your team. And I think these are all equally important. First is set expectations for your students and make sure that you are inspiring them to want to be on the national team. I think we all take for granted that if people see the words national team, they know what it means, or they know what it takes, or that they automatically want to be on it. But I actually think it takes a little bit more than that, particularly in India with younger kids or with kids who are so preoccupied with academic stresses. It might actually be important to explain why it is that they should be on the national team and should try to get there, and what expectations are ones that you are placing on them in terms of the rigor of work and quality of work that they do. The second is to conduct a selection. I understand as someone that feels this many times in my mind that sometimes we feel like we know the kids so well that we just know who's likely to be good at debate. But there are often stereotypes that play into this. Like I tend to instinctively think that extroverted people are better debaters. And I have never been more wrong. And this has been proven time and again to me across the selections that I've been in, which is actually that the kids that are a bit more quiet and shy and reflective and take a bit of time and don't necessarily come across as super boisterous and willing to talk to people and be super charming at first glance are actually incredible debaters and have incredible strengths and skill sets that I missed out on when I was very young and selecting. And I think it's really important for that reason to make sure that our biases don't play into who we think can be a good debater, to conduct a selection, even if we feel roughly like we might know who will be good at this activity. And the last thing is to make sure that once a team is selected, that you are actually checking in with them once in a while to make sure that they're doing regular preparation and aren't just waiting to receive topics or waiting to the last couple of days before they start preparing. So those are the three sections, and I'll go into each of these in a bit of detail. So just on making sure that you are working with the kids for them to understand what it means to be on the national team and what the selection process takes. Here are the few things we think students should know. First is, what is the World Championship and why is this an opportunity that students should gun for? I think that's really important for them to know. I think it's important for them to know that it can actually add to their academic rigor. It can improve their communication skills, their ability to learn and know more about the world, and also opens up doors for them professionally and personally in terms of both making friends, as well as having good interviews, college applications, essays, knowledge for standardized tests if you're applying to Indian universities, etc. Second is just knowing who ISDS is and being a little bit inspired by our journey. And I know I haven't talked about this too much, but when I was first on the Indian national team, and that was back in 2008, so you can imagine how ancient I am, we barely won 2 debates at the World Championships, and there were 20 students who trialed. There are now 3,000 to 4,000 students who do. We've won a championship, and each year we prepare like we can and should be winning the championship. that's a story that I think is incredible and that the students should know more about. I think it's important for them to know how the selection process works. I think it's important for them to know that they should be gunning to prepare for this like they would any national sports team if they were trialing to be on that. And finally, I think it's important to know what commitments you are expecting of students if once they make the team. So for example, this should be their highest priority extracurricular. So I often say that the order of things is academics and health, Team India, WSDC. That's usually the priority order. And that's something I think the students should know. And so here I've got 3 links. You don't need to click on these just yet. But these are 3 links that it's useful. Both of you want to take a look at it, as well as if the students want to take a look at it. There's a video we have on understanding the Team India selection process that we ran in great detail. It's like a 45-minute to an hour long, and it's on our YouTube, and we've linked you to it on this slide. The second is there's a beautiful, beautiful speech that back in 2019, my former coach, current coaching mentor, and board member Sayaka delivers on what it was like when she was coaching Team India and what Team India is like now and what the selection process is like now. And I find that really inspirational. I personally go and watch it just to tear up a little bit about how much has changed in the last decade. So that I think that might be useful both for you to watch and for the kids to watch. And the third is that we have an ISDS selections preparation YouTube playlist where we've spoken to former members of the team just about what they did to get onto the team, gained from being on the team. And I think these are all good ways to set expectations on what to look forward to and what kind of work goes into being on the national team and preparing for the national selection. So you don't need to click through any of these links just yet, but I think these are really useful to share with the students so they can watch and get a sense of what it is that they're preparing for and getting into. Second is selecting a team. And I wanted to be really clear on what the skills and attitudes are that we are looking for. First is structured thinking and writing. So can someone break down a problem and go, these are the constituent parts of the problem. This is how we can fix a particular problem. And can they do that in a logical manner? Second, spontaneity. It is really important that the students are able to absorb information that they get a minute before or 2 minutes before and are able to respond to that coherently and logically. Third, and this is so, so important, strong listening and note-taking skills. From my perspective, debating is 10% speaking, 30% reading, 30% writing, 30% listening. So if those are 3 things that the kids have nailed, speaking is almost an automatic outcome of those 3 things being right. So we are looking for people who can listen and take notes well. We're looking for people with clarity and fluency in speech. And often clarity in speech does not mean, maybe they have a stutter or a stammer, and that's totally fine, but they're able to communicate their ideas clearly because they're thinking about it in a structured manner. And finally, the ability to analyze and solve problems. And the one thing I haven't put in there very explicitly, but is necessary for all of this to be true, is knowledge of the world. We place a really, really high premium on students who are putting in an effort to learn about things around the world that's happening. And that's something that, I would really, really ask that you both look for and stress with the students. The second is in terms of values and attitudes. What are we looking for? We want kids who are hungry and proactive. We want to make sure that they are looking for ways to get better, looking for more opportunity, and will be willing to put in the work that takes them there to get better. Second is we're looking for students who are humble and receptive to feedback. So we would much rather a student ask themselves, what can they do better, rather than find ways to externalize blame. Third is we want students who are incredibly hardworking and willing to put in hours of focused work. And last but certainly not least, we would love for students to be multitasking, because ultimately we want you to do well in your studies. That will always be important to us. We think debating can actually help that process, but it is still something that we know students have to balance. All our alumni have done that really successfully. It's something we know that students are capable of, and it's something we're looking for as well. So this then takes me to kind of what can you do to select for these skills and abilities? And here's where there's like a 2x2 I've created, because, you know, a consultant at heart, once a consultant, always a consultant. I used to do this in my life at some point. But essentially, this is a factor of how much time do you have and how much support do you have? So how much time in terms of like, are you 1 week out from the selection? Are you a couple of weeks out from the selection? Or are you a month and a half out from the selection? How much support do you have, which is, are you the only person trying to get a team together? Or do you think you can pull in people to support you, be that other faculty, be that, you know, senior students in 12th grade that, you know, have good debating skills, be that, you know, even your friends that you can hustle, because I constantly do that. I have friends who have no connection to debate that I, you know, ask if they can read speeches and give me feedback sometimes just to get that perspective. So that's the second factor. The way to think about this is, if you've got little time and little support, that's the bottom left. What we ideally can do in that circumstance is we can set objective quizzes that are easy to correct for the kids you are selecting from, and get them to submit recorded speeches that you can evaluate and listen to on your own time. So the quiz component is testing for hard work and knowledge. The speech component is testing, obviously, for their ability to you know, deliver good speeches, be structured and logical. We're then looking for, if we've got lots of time on hand, but you don't have as much support. So you have lots of time, but you've got low support. What you can, so you've got high time and low support. What have I? Oh, yes. No. That was high time. Okay, sorry. I should have flipped that around, which is that I've made this confusing a little bit. Okay, let me just be. I confused myself, but fine. Okay, so basically, if you've got low time, low support, objective quizzes, and recorded speeches, if you've got low time, but you've got a lot of support, you need to be. Okay. I'm going to say ignore my 2x2 because I did a much better job in the slides that come right after that make this much clearer. I will fix this slide when I upload it back on, and I'll fix it on your guys' presentation. But let me just go through each of these circumstances. If you have low support and low time, what we want you to do is objective quizzes and recorded speeches. So an objective MCQ quiz, that's easy to correct. You can also pull in support to correct that because it takes very little time and is very quick. You can source questions from pre-made questions on the internet. We would include knowledge questions as well as comprehension questions. So some places where we look for comprehension questions include competitive exams like the SATs, where we pick up comprehension questions where you can give multiple choice questions that they can answer so that you have a pre-made answer key and the answers don't differ from student to student. We then ask for students to prepare, record, and email recordings of 4 to 5 minute speeches so that you can evaluate this on your own time rather than have to make yourself available on a particular date. But also you can start evaluating speeches as they start coming in rather than have to evaluate all speeches at once on the particular date you set. Optionally, if you are a teacher that's a social sciences teacher or a literature teacher and has, you know, incredible knowledge of you know, something specific, you know, you are a nerd and know a lot about World War II. You know a lot about Indian politics. You can also set a subjective task on that because that's the sort of thing that you can correct reasonably quickly, even if you get subjective answers on. So here you can click on our links. So I'll give you a moment. Here are some resources that we put together for you to take a look at to see how you can model these bits of the selection. First is we've put in a sample objective quiz, and that is from one of the quizzes that we've set in a selection in the past. So that can actually be reasonably helpful. Now, this is a sample quiz. You can model the questions around these questions, even reuse some of these questions, because ultimately, if there are students who found this quiz and have learned these answers, that still indicates that they're learning. But of course, mix them up and don't repeat all the questions is what I'd say. We do have the answer key as well, but on there, so you can, take that, model questions around that, and use that. So I'll just pause there for a second. So you've got a sample objective quiz that's on the slide in the link that we've sent across. The second question you might ask yourself is, what kinds of topics do I set? And so we decided to put together all the topics we set in the selection rounds in 2022 and 2023. And that's a motion bank where you can select topics from and also have a sense of what kind of topics we set at the selection. And so we've put that together. You can open that as well and take a quick look. These are topics that you can set for the kids. And for those of you who might be feeling a little intimidated with the way these are phrased, like this house would do something, this house believes that something is something, this house regrets something, please ignore the this house language. You can just set a topic that says large sporting tournaments should not be held in dictatorship countries. And that's completely fine as well. That does the job. Similar topic that drops the this house language that WSDC often uses. So please don't be intimidated by that, but that's a place where you can pick up some topics and set them. The last thing that we've put in for you is a judge briefing that we give to all our judges at the selection. You can, of course, on your own time, go through this in great detail, but slide 23 onwards tells you what to look for in a speech that makes it good content, good style, and good strategy, and how to score speeches. And you can see that from slide 23 onwards. And so that's a scale that you can use. That's a scale that we use at the World Championship that we adapted for the selections. So overall, those are the sort of 3 resources we put together. If you don't have too much time, if you don't have too much support, this is a good starting point. I will not deny that this will still be a bit difficult, and it's not just something that you can easily do in a couple of hours in a day's time. But if you've got a week and a half to the selection, that's what I would say, a week and a half to 2 weeks, that's what I would say is something that you can do to make sure that you are still holding a rigorous process, but within a short period of time and with limited resources. Perfect. So I know that some of you are asking me to reshare the presentation link. We're going to drop that in the chat in just 1 second. And I'm just going to hold on because one of my team members is just dropping it in the chat. Okay, so the second thing we've got here, and don't worry, once you get the link on the chat, you will have it forever. And we've put together a document with all the links that we will share at the end of the presentation, so you can also look at it on your own time. The second is, if you've got a lot of time, but you don't have a lot of people supporting you, and you're a one-person show or a one-person army, as is the case when you're first starting out a debate club in your school, but you might have time on your hand because there's still time to a lot of the selection competitions. Subjective quizzes and live speeches. And the reason we're making that distinction is because subjective quizzes allow you to adjudicate a student's argumentative and structuring ability more. And so we do recommend some subjective components to a quiz you set. And then live speeches. So live speeches, because you can actually test whether kids can think on their feet and be spontaneous. Because what's really important in the WSDC format is not that you're able to read a speech off of paper or even recite a speech that you have memorized off of paper, but you are able to have a conversational flow with the audience and talk about a topic that you've only gotten 45 minutes in advance. So I highly recommend live speeches if you have the time to organize and schedule this. So just in terms of mixed quizzes, you can test knowledge and the application of this knowledge, or how well students are able to explain having that knowledge. Chat GPT is actually a good resource to generate questions and answer keys and can shortcut your process. Of course, if any of your schools or you are using GPT-4, GPT-4 is even better. The one thing I do want to say is Chat GPT has a time cutoff, which means if you ask it for very, very current affairs, like things that happen at the Olympics, for example, Chat GPT, the free version, will not be able to give you accurate answers. So it's important to make sure to check for accuracy and make sure to ask it the kinds of questions that it can generate from before its time cutoff, which I think is some point at 2023 at this point in time. And then you can, of course, organize live speech and rebuttal rounds where you can do one-on-one rounds because you're the only judge and you don't have enough people for full debates. So one-on-one rounds where students speak on a particular topic and then the opposition can respond to that, or the student that speaks can then do a turncoat and respond to themselves, even if you want to organize it that way. So some links that we've put together on this slide for you is we have a sample subjective quiz. And this is the quiz we set at the national selection last year. We've stuck in the motion bank. And here, once again, the judge briefing from slide 23 onwards. And I'll wait for a couple of seconds. Also, I know I've got questions on the chat about download access. We'll make access changes at the end of the presentation. Perfect. I am, hoping that you could at least take a look at some of the questions that are on the subjective quiz. Motion bank, of course, same as before, and the judge briefing, same as before as well. Now, the third category here, which is if you actually do have people supporting. For example, you have an established debate club infrastructure where you can pull in the help of senior students to support the selection of the junior team. Or for the senior team, you can pull in the help of faculty, or maybe you have a debate club president who knows debaters or university debaters and is able to pull in that support. If you are able to pull in support, or if you have support, which is you have a lot of support, but you don't have very much time, the easiest way to do this is to just conduct full rounds of WSDC debate. Of course, if you don't know the WSDC format, it's fine to conduct 1 versus 1 rounds where you make sure that both students at the end of their speeches have to deliver some responses to each other's speeches and point out something and respond to something from those speeches. But believe me when I say there are some ways to quickly familiarize yourself with the WSDC format, and we have put that on the slide. In case that's something you aren't able to do, that's completely fine. One-on-one debates are still a good proxy. So fix a day to hold maybe 3 WSDC style rounds. Inform the students of at least one of these rounds as topics in advance so that they can come prepared. Conduct 2 impromptu rounds. That means release the topic 45 minutes in advance. Score speeches and collect feedback, and select students based on the speech scores plus the feedback you receive on the students. One thing that's worth doing is planning in advance what the team groups that they'll be in. So don't keep them in one same team, just so you can rotate their speaker position. You can rotate them into a different team and see how they work with different students. You can check whether they've been putting in the work or whether it's the rest of their team that made a difference. And these are all things you can test if you rotate the students around. So some resources that we're hoping will help this process. Obviously, you've got the motion bank. Second, there is for topics. Second, there is we've actually set a link to a demo debate. The usefulness of this demo debate is that if you just watch this start to end, you will get a sense of what a full WSDC debate looks like. So this is done by some of the Team India former squad members. So these are 6-minute speeches on a simple standard topic. This house would ban gambling. It's something we discuss in a lot of our beginner sessions. So if you're new to the format and just want to see how it works and how these debates look and sound, that's a good starting point. We then have the selections judge briefing. And this time, the whole briefing actually does a good job of explaining how you can judge debates. It's a little bit different to judging individual speeches or elocution speeches. It actually teaches you how to evaluate a debate holistically. So that's something that you can use. But if not, the World Championships in 2022 uploaded a video on how to track speeches and score speakers and how to evaluate clashes. And we've linked you to that on here. So those are all resources that you can use to familiarize yourself with the format and on how to judge. So someone in the chat asks me where they can view these resources. We've put them together both in a separate link as well as these are all embedded in the presentation that I'm currently sharing. I'll resend the link, which is here, and you can take a look at the links on the presentation. We've also just got a link of links, so to speak. So we will send that across as well. And finally, if you are in the envious position, which I think a lot of you might actually be, of having support as well as time on hand. Honestly, if you have time on hand, you can pull in support as well. So that's an option you can explore. So if you have support and time on hand, we want you to give the students a bit of time to develop and learn and see how they're growing. We want you to set them intensive research tasks so they have a sense of what kind of work they need to be putting in going into the selection. And of course, please do debate rounds. So we've explained how that works here, which is that give the students ample time with the WSDC format. Give them resources where they can learn the format, set them video watching tasks, tasks where they have to watch sessions on the WSDC format or watch sessions on different WSDC skills, and give them about 1 week where they can watch all this, write notes on this, practice to themselves. They can upload video notes or reports as an indication that they have actually completed the videos you've set them and they've done this work. You can also assign groups of students to senior students for mentorship. So for example, you can say, I've got these 4 12th grade students who are looking for a position of responsibility. Each of them will take on a few students in 10th grade or 9th grade or 8th grade, whichever grades it is. They will make sure that these videos reports have been uploaded by these students. They'll read through those reports and come back and give us a sense of how much work has gone. So that's also something you can do and you have the option of doing. And then set a research task on an important current affairs topic. So we love doing deep dive research tasks so that students know in depth about an issue. So this can be policy topics, economics, international relations, and you can optionally set a quiz on this later as well. And based on how much time and energy and support you have, you can add on more layers. You can do a second quiz. You can do a speech task. And then you can eliminate students based on how many students are trialing based on this round. Of course, similar to the slide I just presented, at the end, when you have the last few students, hold rounds of debates, collect scores across rounds and feedback, and then make your selections decision. Now, what does it mean to set a research task? You can't just say, hey, can everyone research on the Olympics? Because that's actually really difficult for someone who just can't automatically structure things and hasn't gotten into that habit yet to do. So you will have to ask prompting questions that enable them to explore this better. So For that reason, we've posted on there a research task sample that we used to set for Team India. Those can actually be starting points to this that you can set the students. We've got one on China and domestic and international politics. We've got one on domestic politics in the US. And believe me when I say this is one of my favorite things to set students, because I actually think it increases interest in world affairs and debate and critical and analytical thinking. But also, it really shows you who that person is that is coming out of this, a complete nerd who may not have been that person before this. And then, of course, you've got the motion. You've then got the motion bank. You've got the demo debate. Okay, at this point, I'm going to pause for a second because I do want you guys to click on the format guide. That will take you to our selections website. And there are 3 documents you can download there if you hit the button, download free preparatory material. 2 documents that are just a competition guide that explains everything in great detail about the selections. And 1 document on the WSDC format guide. And in that format guide, there are a number of videos for each speaker position. We've tagged a video on saying, watch this speaker to understand this speaker position better in this debate. So those are all debates that are a good starting point for students to watch in preparation. I've then tapped on the ISDS selections judge briefing. And the guide on tracking and scoring speakers for debate purposes. So yes, forgive my crazy slide making on the 2x2 that I confused myself on, but these 4 slides explain very, very clearly what your options are that I think would work. And we at ISDS have done to varying degrees before, when we've had time versus not had time, when we've had multiple volunteers help us versus when we've had just Vashni sitting in the corner of her hostel room at IIT Madras correcting quizzes. So hopefully this is something that can be helpful to you as well. So low support, low time, low support, high time, high support, low time, and high support, high time. Last thing here is just to give you a sense of what your team compositions should look like. I always recommend 4-member teams rather than 3-member teams. 1, it obviously gives more kids opportunities. 2nd, if one of your kids falls sick, drops out, there is someone else that can substitute in. And 3rd, it gives you the opportunity to select development speakers. What do we mean by development speakers? In a junior team, you have 3 9th graders and 1 8th grader, or 2 9th graders, 1 8th grader, and 1 7th grader. And that's really, really useful because the 7th grader, for example, can spend a year learning, even if they're not put into all their 4 debates, and can help in this process for students who might want to be on, who are new and older, as well as younger next year. So that's a good way to future-proof. So I highly recommend a blend of younger and older speakers. And I would definitely say compose your teams with speaker roles in mind. Don't just select students that you think can deliver an impassioned speech once you give them a speech. Make sure that you're mixing that up with students who can respond to arguments on the spot. So yeah, that's a bit of a download from my brain on the things that you can do based on the support, resources, and time that you have to select a team. So that's your second step, which is to conduct a selection. Finally, make sure that you are checking in on student preparation. First is infrastructural support. Do they have infrastructural support to prepare? Can they stay back in a classroom after school? Can they access the library or computer resources for research, etc.? So if you are a student debate club head, and these are not things that you've thought about before, you should. But in case you have and you don't have as much support with this, start thinking beforehand on what you can do to overcome this. Can you get your team to meet from their homes on Gmeet? If yes, how many times a week will you be meeting? What kind of preparation will you be doing? Second is, all of you need to make sure that your students are receiving things at the right times. For example, have they received their prepared debate topics at least 4 days before the competition? Do they know when their technical check slots are? Have they downloaded preparatory material? So these are a bit administrative, but can make a huge difference between whether a team feels supported and feels that they're being held accountable by their teachers or debate club members or captains and not. And finally, are they putting in regular and concerted work to make themselves better debaters? Can you drop in as a surprise one day to set them a topic and see if they can give you good arguments on that? Can they record a debate and send that to you at some point, regardless of whether you can, watch many of these? Are they still doing that once in a while? And are you storing that somewhere so that you can use it for future debaters? And here are some resources that we've just linked you to that can help in this process. The first is a coaching support pack that the World Championship team in 2022 put together. And that links you to multiple things: skill session YouTube videos, knowledge session YouTube videos, format orientation YouTube videos, debate YouTube playlists. So those can all be things that students are using to prepare. Please bear in mind, preparation does not have to be that the three of them are able to debate against somebody else. Preparation can also be you watch a video, you analyze that video, you deliver a speech based on speeches in that video as if you are the third speaker. Measure that up to the video and see how that third speaker does. There are multiple ways to prepare as an individual student or as a team of three without necessarily having opponents. Are you prepping together and making sure that you know how to use your 45 minutes of preparation time? Then, we've also linked you to the selections preparation YouTube playlist for more ideas on what you can do, a debate skill prep tips, like 1-minute prep tips playlist, and of course, the ISDS events calendar. And we've linked you to that because we have posted on all our free sessions that we will be talking more about the format on starting Monday, as well as a number of low intensity, medium intensity, high intensity preparation sessions that are paid, but you can choose to enter those if you want to get a bit of extra preparation. That being said, a number of Team India students from the past have put in a lot of individual work and taken a lot of individual initiative. So you don't necessarily need to be at a paid class. But of course, if you wanted that extra bit of push and brush up, you can definitely come on to one of our classes. We, always love to help out. And yeah, that takes me to just our set of upcoming sessions and workshops, just to make sure. These are the free workshops that we've got on. So every workshop from here on out is a skill workshop, rather skill or a knowledge workshop rather than orientation workshop. So you've got a workshop on interpreting WSDC topics that I'm doing on Monday. You've got a workshop on teamwork and how to use your 45 minutes of prep time on the 19th. And we'll be posting to Instagram who your trainers will be for each of these sessions, just so you can get a little bit excited. We've got a session from a Sri Lankan debater that I love on the 26th on debating on topics you know a little about. Well, not a little about, just little about, which means you don't know very much about. On the 2nd, we're doing some work on mastering research and putting together research files and building knowledge. On the 9th of September, one of my favorite World Championship finalist debaters in the world will be doing a knowledge session on religion in contemporary society, and that's entirely for free. And of course, everyone that's sort of signing on to our senior selections, as well as any and all teachers and parents are free to sign up to our college applications panel on the 23rd of September. We've got 7 to 8 Team India squad alumni that will be talking to you about, the application process, where they applied to, how they made those decisions, what are some things they put on their essays and resumes, and this includes both Indian universities as well as universities abroad. And then these are our sets of paid workshops and paid training that we've put together. There are a number of these upcoming. Of course, today is already the 10th, so you can't, attend the eighth session live, but we of course have recorded that. So if you want access to the recording and the activities, that's something you can write to us for, and we're able to offer that as well. But these are the upcoming sessions that you can look forward to, and we will be posting about each of the trainers for these sessions on our Instagram. Yep. So those are, of course, where you can visit our pages and reach out. Last but certainly not the least is I wanted to make sure very quickly before I opened up for questions to chat about just making sure that you are reaching out to schools in your communities that that your students know, that will likely be entering the selection as well, to ensure that you are actually setting up debates with them and practices with them and growing as a community. So some ways to do this include when you invite schools to your MUN, when you go to other schools' debating competitions, and in case you want to reach out to us to say that you'd love to have practice debates against some of the schools that regularly we work with, because we know some of the alumni there, we can also put you in touch. But I do think it's important to make sure that once you've put together the team as part of your preparation, finding a spar once in a while is a good way to check where you are in this process. So that's broadly it from me. I am going to pause here first and make sure that everyone has the link to the presentation. Oh, I also realized I signed back in after the internet went out, but didn't change my name, which is Varshini, and definitely not Atul, as you can see. So yes, I'm just going to make sure that everyone has access once again to the presentation that I just went through. We will be sending you a link to the presentation. We will on email, so everyone that signed up will also get a link on email. We will also be sending you the link that we've uploaded on YouTube to this recording, so you can take a look at that as well. And yeah, happy selections for your own schools and teams. Okay, questions, you can put them on the chat or raise your hand. Yes, Arav.
Hi. So just to like digress a little from Indian selections, in terms of the ISDC championships, like when can we register, or like when will it happen, and stuff such as that?
Yes, good question. You will likely get the dates towards the end of this month. The prelim rounds for the championships will likely happen last week of October or first week of November. The finals, the grand finals of ISDC, the date is actually pre-decided. That will be happening on the 26th of December, right before we kick off the national selections. So you can expect to register towards that point. But don't worry, every single person that's ever registered anything with ISDS does get an email when our registration is out. So you will definitely get an email in your inbox. So just keep a lookout for it.
Okay, and just like a follow-up, so a lot of the people in our in DebSoc face like a lot of problems in terms of content generation. Like how could you do you have like any advice as to like how I can try and like help them?
Yes, so I would recommend a couple of things. One is to make sure that everyone is reading The Economist. I cannot stress this enough. But if you've got time, and I think you do, just get people started on reading the news consistently, because there is no better way to generate content than to know about the world. However, in knowing that since you might be operating under time crunches, etc., make sure that you are either listening to podcasts or watching these videos of news presentations, if not reading through The Economist cover to cover. So a couple of presenters that I personally recommend are John Oliver. I would recommend Pod Save America, which is pretty good. The Seen and the Unseen podcast, which is an India-based one, is also pretty good. That's one. So building knowledge is definitely one. The second is watching lots of debate videos is a shortcut to generating material as well, because you can quickly link up to a debate you've watched and the arguments that they made in that debate and pull from that. However, watching debate videos cannot be a passive activity. Members of your debate club have to make sure that they are taking notes, reflecting on what else could have been said, what else they would have said if they were in that position, what worked and what didn't. And they need to be making those notes for themselves to actually benefit from watching that debate. So make sure that you do that. There's actually a 1-minute tip video on this that Dhruva did for us, which is called Dhruva's Debate Deconstruction Tips. So it actually tells you in like a 1-minute way, what are the things you should be doing when you watch a debate. So that's a good kind of starting point to make sure that everybody is actively watching a debate rather than passively watching one. And once you start getting used to watching debates, you can start putting them on 1.5 as you take notes. And you can also kind of listen to them in the background, but making sure you actively watch and listen to debates at the start to make sure you can generate that material.
Thank you.
Varshini, could you just put the names of your recommended podcasts in the chat box?
They are actually all on. So, we have a YouTube playlist that says select like preparation tip videos. So we've got 6, I think, 1-minute tips. One of them is how to build knowledge, and that has a really detailed set of recommendations on different sorts of things. So what long form news articles, what short news articles, what kinds of podcasts, what kinds of funny commentary videos. And so that's got that in much more detail. But the ones that I mentioned are, and Tejaswini is the person that does that video. So and in terms of loads of debates, one way for you to, good starting point is look at the WSDC finals and semifinals from the last 5-6 years. That's a good starting point. Then the World Universities Debating Championships finals and semis from the last few years. Then the European Universities Debating Championships from the finals and semis in the last few years. So I'll kind of go through all the highest quality rounds from the last few years from the top debate championships and work my way backwards. Yes, Niyati?
Yes, ma'am. So it's a follow-up question to what Arav asked. So I wanted to ask, like, researching and building up knowledge is like the first step, right? So what's like the second step? Do you like, when you've like acquired all the knowledge, how do you apply it? Do you like memorize it, or do you like write speeches or write your own stance on what you understand?
So there's multiple ways to do this. Once again, do not read the news passively, read the news actively. Please make sure that you are annotating the news as you're reading it so that you're able to identify where it is that someone that writes a piece of news is making an argument, and where it is that there are some facts or context that you're supposed to know. Second step is just pick up a motion, take 5 minutes to think about all the arguments that you can run with the knowledge you have that is adjacent to a news article you've read, just to see how you can apply that. And then I would say, make sure to get onto some of there's a lot of content out there, but if you've gone through how to build an argument, or if you've taken a look at speaker roles material, there's some basics on how to build an argument. See if you're able to do that with the knowledge. Make sure to extract the logic of an example. use that to construct the argument, and then to put in the details of an example.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to hold on for 1 more minute for any further questions. But of course, your questions can come to us in our inboxes even after this point in case something strikes you later. So please feel free to drop us a message and ask. But that is broadly it from me. That was a crash course on my experiences selecting with various groups of students from when it was 40 students to right now 4,000, it would seem. So hopefully these are little selections that you can run in your own schools and communities, and you find the value in doing that. I will fully acknowledge that this is a lot of hard work, and fully acknowledge that we depend on the heroes genuinely that are our teachers and DebSoc presidents who take this initiative, because that is what holds this country's debating culture together. So just wanted to say thank you for being here and taking the time out. Thank you for listening so patiently and putting down all the things that I've talked about, and hopefully this is helpful for you going into the next few weeks. Yeah, I am getting a number of thank yous in the chat, both privately and externally. You're very, very welcome. And I really, really look forward to, making. Actually, I don't look forward to this at all. I really, really do not look forward to making the really difficult decisions that we make the selections every year, thanks to your hard work. And yes, see you all in future sessions. Bye-bye. Have a great evening.